Every patient who checked into room 13 at Mercy General was dead within 72 hours. Every single one, and I know why, I just wish I didn't. My name is Dana Reyes, and for 3 years I worked the night shift in the cardiac unit at Mercy General Hospital in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I started in the fall of 2018, fresh out of nursing school, 26 years old and convinced that I had chosen the right career. Mercy General was a mid-size hospital, about 300 beds, not too old, not too new, the kind of place that smells like floor wax and recycled air and never quite loses the undertone of antiseptic no matter how much lavender the cleaning staff uses. I loved the night shift in those early days. Quieter, slower, time to actually know the patients before handing them off at 7 a.m. The night shift nurses were their own kind of community, dark humor, strong coffee, the shared understanding that came from being the one still awake when most of the world wasn't. Room 13 sat at the far end of the east wing, past the supply closet and the elevator that broke down every other month and nobody ever fully repaired. It was a perfectly ordinary room on paper, standard single occupancy layout, 2 windows that looked out onto the hospital's back parking lot. The same monitors, the same overhead fluorescent lighting, the same linoleum floors as every other room on that floor. I had no reason to pay it any more attention than the others, until I started counting. The first death I connected to room 13 was a man named Mr. Calloway, 67 years old, admitted in January 2019 for heart failure monitoring, moved to room 13 because the rooms closer to the nurse's station were all occupied. His condition had been stable, his numbers were holding. I checked on him at midnight and he was watching a late-night talk show with the volume low, the way patients do when they're trying not to fully acknowledge they're in a hospital. He waved at me through the glass. 2 hours later, his monitor flatlined. The attending said it was a sudden deterioration. The paperwork was signed and he was moved out by morning. I didn't think much of it. People die in hospitals. That's the reality of the work. The second death was a woman named Elaine, 42 years old. She had come in for a routine gallbladder surgery 3 weeks after Mr. Calloway. No pre-existing cardiac conditions, no complications during the procedure. She was placed in room 13 because the census was high that week flu season. The halls were full. She asked the aide for a crossword puzzle at 9 in the evening. She ate her full dinner tray. She died at 4:14 in the morning with no documented explanation beyond cardiac arrest, which in a 42-year-old with no cardiac history is a way of saying we simply don't know what happened. That was when I started keeping a notebook. I began going back through patient records, 3 months at first, then 6 months, then all the way back to when I had started. The numbers stopped me cold. In the 2.5 years since I had arrived at Mercy General, 37 patients had been assigned to room 13. Not one had been discharged alive. I checked my math 4 times. Then I went back 5 more years using records I still had access to. 41 patients, 41 deaths, no exceptions. I told Marcus, a senior nurse I trusted. He told me I was exhausted. He said confirmation bias was a well-documented phenomenon in healthcare workers, especially those on night shift. He suggested I take some vacation days. I almost let myself believe him. I tried once to have a patient moved before she could be placed in that room. A woman named Frances, 63 years old, admitted for medication adjustment, low risk, routine stay. I asked the charge nurse to find her a different bed. She asked me why. I said I had concerns about the room's infrastructure. She said it had just passed inspection. Frances was in room 13 by 11 that night. I spent most of that shift walking past her door, checking on her more often than protocol required, as if my presence alone could change whatever was going to happen. She was gone by 5 in the morning. The charge nurse filed my room change request as an incident of interference with patient placement. Then Donna Miller was admitted in March 2020. 55 years old, stable angina, monitoring only low risk. She was talkative. She called the nurse's station 3 times before midnight just to ask for extra blankets. On her second night in room 13, I went to check on her at 12:15 in the morning. Her vitals were clean. Her eyes were open. She was staring at the far corner of the room. I asked if she was all right. She turned to look at me slowly, the way someone moves when they can't quite take their eyes off something. She said, very quietly, "There's someone standing over there." I looked. The corner was empty. Just the wall, the equipment, the strip of shadow where the overhead light didn't quite reach. I told her it was just the shadows, that it was late, that her brain was tired. She looked back at me and said, "It's been standing there since I turned the lights off. It hasn't moved, it just keeps watching me." She was dead by 3:47 in the morning. Cause of death listed as cardiac event. And that's when I heard it. I had submitted a formal mortality review request to hospital administration. Dates, names, statistics, everything laid out as precisely as I could manage. The response came back 5 days later. The room had passed its most recent safety and environmental inspection. No further action required. That night, the room sat empty between patients. I stood in the hallway outside room 13 for a long time, not moving, just watching the closed door. The east wing at 3 in the morning has a particular silence to it, not peaceful, more like held, like the building itself is listening. I put my hand on the door handle. Through the door, and I want to be precise about this, because I have thought about it many times since I heard breathing. Low and slow and steady, coming from inside an empty room. I opened the door. Dark, equipment powered down, the bed made up clean, corners squared the way housekeeping always left them. I reached for the light switch. The overhead fluorescent flickered once, twice. In the far corner, the one by the second window, there was a shape. I can only tell you what I registered before the light steadied. It was tall, too tall, wrong proportions for a person. Dark the way deep shadows are dark, except it was standing where the light should have reached, and it was turning toward me, slowly, with no urgency at all, the way something moves when it has no reason to hurry. The light came fully on. The corner was empty. But the air over there was different, not cold exactly, heavier, pressurized, the way a room feels after something has just happened in it, and there was a smell. Old and damp and faintly metallic, like standing water sealed inside a space that hasn't seen daylight in years. It was coming from that corner, from exactly where the shape had been standing. I backed out of the room. I closed the door without taking my eyes off that corner. I sat at the nurse's station until 6 in the morning, and I didn't write any of it down. The next morning, a new admission came through. The only available bed on the floor was room 13. I watched them wheel her down the corridor, 71 years old. Her name was Patricia, and her daughter walked beside the gurney carrying a get well card decorated with hand-drawn sunflowers. Patricia was dead within 48 hours. I gave my notice 3 weeks later. I told them it was burnout. That wasn't entirely wrong. After I left, I started looking into the building's history. I found a maintenance record from 1987 referencing significant mold and water damage remediation in the East Wing, room 13 specifically. I found a staff complaint form from 1994 about persistent, unexplained odors in that room. I found a document from 1971 that I am not going to describe in detail, except to say that what it documented had nothing to do with a patient death. It was something that happened before room 13 was ever a patient room, when that space was being used for a different purpose entirely. Whatever that purpose was, someone chose to seal the records and keep using the room anyway. I don't know what lives in room 13. I don't know if it arrived with the building or if it accumulated slowly, the way certain places seem to absorb what happens inside them over decades. I don't know if it causes the deaths or simply attends them, waits for them, prefers them. I know that Mercy General Hospital still operates. I know the East Wing is still in use. I don't know if room 13 still has a door on it. I hope it doesn't. If you've experienced something you can't explain, tell me in the comments, and if you want more stories like this, subscribe. I have plenty more to tell.